YouTube? So what's going on? It's your boy Father Dark. We're out here on Marvel Rivals, man, really hard. I have not been able to stop playing this game, honestly. And for someone who has never been into hero shooters before, I think that is saying a pretty tremendous amount. I've been thinking about it a lot. I made a video last week when the game came out talking about, is Marvel Rivals better than Overwatch? And I've had a lot of time to think about it from just playing the game. And from the clickbaity thumbnail that I had to put up for you guys, because I know what you guys like, for all the gentlemen out there. But nonetheless, though, once I've really had time to kind of analyze it, because for me, Overwatch had a lot of characters that you take, like May, for example, like that's Bay right there, next to Velma, you know what I mean, as far as video game and cartoon characters that I've always been like, yo, you guys know. But outside of that, though, they have plenty of they've inspired so many different cosplays and different things and stuff like that. So we can't just say that it's something as simple as that. It's not like a Concord situation where the characters came out and everyone nobody played the game because there was this massive. I mean, anybody who's been following gaming, if you're on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, but I call it Twitter nonetheless. Though, if you've been on there, I mean, or really any social media, you've seen how there's been this backlash lately where there's these games that people have considered to be woke. And the backlash against it and all that kind of stuff, and people saying, well, if you make the characters more appealing and all this kind of stuff, people are going to go for it. Which I do think there are a base of people that applies to. But ultimately, if you're really a gamer, it's all about the gaming experience. You know what I mean? Like how do you feel when you're playing the game? There's an actual definition to the word fun, and it applies to like I said, your experience of the game, right? Like how do you actually feel? Are you getting that dopamine rush when you're actually playing the game? And one of the things that I think of when I think about Overwatch off of rip, and I think what about Overwatch kind of made me not be into the game? And I think I said it in my last video, but as someone who's very ADHD and kind of when I'm playing games, like to be all over the place and jump and stuff all the time and just do a lot of different things. That was one of the first things about Overwatch that I really couldn't stand. I can't stand clunky gameplay where I feel like my character weighs 1,000,000 pounds and I can't do anything. And don't get it twisted, there's characters like that in Marvel Rivals. Rivals. You have your tanky characters that move extremely slow and have zero mobility and stuff. But that's an option, right? If you want mobility, if you want to be able to zoom around the map, I've been playing as Iron Man, and it feels like you're playing as Iron Man. You know what I mean? You being able to go up in the air and pick people off and stuff like that, being able to rush in, being able to fly through, a bunch of enemies and, use missiles and stuff like that. Having the option between the pulse blast and stuff versus the beam cannon, so many different things, right? And one of the other things too that I really disliked from Overwatch was being a healer, you kind of just felt like you were a healer. Now don't get me wrong, there's people who are really good at the game who could be healers and they could also kind of pop off in the DPS area and stuff like that. But for the most part, though, when you're a healer, you were really a healer, and that's really what it focused on. Whereas I feel like with Rivals, you really have a lot of different options. I've been lately playing as healers, which I never would have done in Overwatch. The only time I did was I played as Moira, and people would always get upset because I would just run around and just be deleting enemies and stuff, and not really, healing nearly as much and stuff. Whereas in this game, a lot of people, they're just jumping on. They haven't really played hero shooters and stuff before, so they don't really understand the dynamics, especially the fact that you don't have to have a balanced team. So it completely changes the dynamic of the gameplay, where you might have a team where people mostly just pick DPS and there are no healers, or they go multiple tanks, or they go numerous healers, with just a couple of DPS or one tank or something like that, right? So it completely changes the dynamic of the gameplay and makes the gameplay so much more hectic sometimes, and in my opinion so much more strategic, because it's left up to the players and the teams how they want to choose to set up their strategy for the game. So it's just it's completely different. But ultimately though, sorry, I'm in a Discord call, I had to turn the volume down there. But ultimately though, they they've figured out how to, there's a lot of times where people will say, "Oh, well, someone took this thing from this game, or someone took this thing from this game," and a lot of people get like way too bent up on that. There's an expression like "there's nothing new under the sun." And every now and again, something new does come out, right? Like, so like everyone has to be like the first one to. I remember one time I did a video like where it was like a deep breakdown on like where teabagging came from. I know that sounds funny, right? Like, what does this have to do with teabagging, right? But it's interesting because a lot of people think that teabagging started from Halo. They think that's like the first game that did it. But when you actually look it up, there's been games way before Halo that had the ability to crouch. And as soon as you've given players the ability to crouch, and I can't remember because the video I did this years ago, but if I'm not mistaken, it was like a Rainbow Six game or something like that, or some type of Tom Clancy game from like the late 90s or something that gave people the ability to crouch. And there was actually a game before that, but I think this was like the first like multiplayer game that we had that gave you the ability to do it. And I remember that they were like, there was in the article that was talking about it, there was one of the developers or something, and they were saying that as soon as they launched the game and it had the crouching mechanic, they started noticing that a bunch of players were like crouching over other people's dead bodies and stuff like that. So enemy players' bodies and stuff. So it's like you have to sometimes really look at stuff and really go back and analyze it. But nonetheless, though, I'm getting off point a little bit, but the point I was making is that every game kind of has like, not every game, but every like genre of game has a game that like first does something, right? You take FPS. The first FPS game that I can think of was like Doom, right? So when if you have people and they say, oh well, they're not the first ones to do this. This person did this, or this game did this, or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter because you could make that little same argument about anything. Any FPS that you play, some game has made an FPS before, and in my opinion, like if something's not broke, then you don't need to fix it. And you have to put respect on Overwatch's name. They basically created, in my opinion, like the foundation. And there may, like I said, I'm not into hero shooters, so there may be a bunch of other hero shooters that existed before, whatever. Nonetheless, though, this, that was the first one that I was ever introduced into, and I wasn't really into it, right? Maybe it's because, like I've said before in the previous video, I'm more of like a lone wolf kind of guy. So like I prefer to be able to do my own thing and still succeed even when I'm in kind of like a team-based kind of setting. Like think about like wrestling or something, right? It's like my team might lose, but I won my match, though. Do you get what I'm saying, right? Versus where it's like basketball or football, where if your team loses, it's more looked at upon as like the team loss, right? You could score 60 points, but if your team lost, nobody really cares ultimately, right? So, to me, that's completely different. But still, in the same time, Overwatch they did a lot of things right. But there, unfortunately, when you're kind of like the first person to do something, there's always going to be room for other people to look back and improve upon the things that when they have feedback from other players that say, hey, like for example, if somebody would have asked me, hey, Dark, what do you not like about Overwatch, what would you change? And I would say mobility. Like, don't make me move so slow. It's like to a point where I'm crawling, right? I don't have the ability to kind of like speed up or anything, right? And not saying that Marvel Rivals gives like players the ability to run or anything, but you do have some characters, like let's say Mantis, for example, where she's just naturally kind of faster versus like Magneto for another example where he's extremely slow, but he's a tanky character. So, it makes sense. He has 600 health or 650, whatever the tank base health is or whatever. So, completely different thing. But nonetheless, though, Marvel Rivals has done what, I feel like a really good example is when you look at Battle Royales, right? Battle Royales first came out, the first Battle Royale was like the mod for Arma. They did after like the movies came out. You had like I don't know if anyone's familiar with the actual movie that's called Battle Royale. It's like a Japanese or Chinese movie. I think it's Japanese, but I could be wrong. Nonetheless, they made that movie. People made a mod for Arma, and then it kind of took off because it was something different, right? Everybody was used to the normal multiplayer. You load in, die, respawn, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, though, people like new games kept adapting that same like, idea, but they kept improving upon it, right? You had Fortnite that came out. You had PUBG. That's when I feel like it became kind of more mainstream and really popular. But at the time, PUBG was only PC, if I'm not mistaken, right? This is before it came out on console. And then you had Fortnite. Fortnite went through the roof simply because it was more accessible. It was free to play. And that's not even like the main game that they were trying to make. They made a zombies game like Save the World or something like that. I forget what the original game was called. That's how unpopular it was. And, on a whim, they just said, hey, you know what? Game's not really doing that good. People don't really care about it. Let's PUBG's really popular. Let's make a battle royale. They make their battle royale. Then what happens? Then Warzone comes out. Now, I can't remember. I can't remember. I always mess it up. I can't remember if Apex came out first or Warzone came out first. Regardless of which one came out first, they came out around like the same time. And it wasn't Warzone. It was Blackout because that was the first one, obviously. But, and forgive me for ranting here, but, I'm building all this up, though, for something. Nonetheless, when these games came out, they all did something slightly different. Like, for example, in Fortnite and PUBG, you used to get eliminated, and that was just it. You just had to spectate your teammates, which added a level of intensity to the game because you weren't coming back, right? But then Apex comes out and, they allowed you, it was the same thing with Blackout too. And Blackout, once you were done, it was just, rip. But then, Apex comes out and they're like, hey, you know what? If you can get to your teammate's box in time, then you can actually respawn them. And that added a whole different level. Then they had like zip lines and stuff to give you the option, to get up to places that you would normally be able to get up to, different things and stuff like that. That vertical and horizontal zip lines and stuff. So, in my opinion, it's good for, games to come out and expound upon different things that are missing in other games, right? It's like the same idea is there, right? It's like they're all battle royales, but what separates them? What makes them popular? Fortnite has building, it has, basically an infinite just amount of skins and crossovers and stuff they do. So like if you're into the more colorful, cartoony type of stuff, building, all that kind of stuff, you got Fortnite. If you're into hero shooters, like if you like games like Marvel Rivals and Overwatch and stuff, but you want a more battle royale experience, then you have Apex Legends, right? That's their niche. Call of Duty appeals to the, I want to say like milsim crowd, but Call of Duty is as far away from like milsim as you can possibly get. It's just the theme of it, the aesthetic is more realistic, but the actual gameplay is as arcadey as it gets, right? And then you have PUBG. It's the third person kind of thing that's realistic, but also kind of arcade. No, it's not really arcadey, but you guys get what I'm saying though, right? So all these things have something that separates them and makes them stand out. And if you were to make a game that was like just a clone of this other thing, you kind of take like and they're not battle royales, but an example would be Call of Duty to what was it? X Defiant, right? X Defiant shutting down, and there's a reason why, right? Because like they tried to make basically like a straight up clone. I mean, there was certain aspects of it that were different as far as like the characters and them having like abilities and stuff like that. But how's that really any different than like Black Ops, right? When they've done stuff like that in the past, where you've had character abilities and stuff like that, or operator abilities and all that kind of stuff in classes. So to me, like that was the problem with that game. But like if someone was to make something that was like Call of Duty, but they expounded upon it and added all the things that were missing and stuff like that, the positive things, right? Then it wouldn't really be a problem. But people have to kind of like lay off that, like, oh well, I saw like a thing where they were talking about Doctor Strange and the portals, and people were impressed by the portals and stuff. The fact that they could add that in, people were like, well, there's a whole game called Portal before that. Okay, did Portal make a hero team-based shooter? Like, no. And if they did, nobody talks about it or remembers it or plays it because, clearly it wasn't to this level, right? So it's like, to me, it's fine to add in all the best aspects of other games and to make it your own, right? And, now getting to the next point too, I think too that it's a situation where you're taking an IP like, Marvel and comics and their characters and stuff like that, and you're putting them into a game, and people like already they have like a strong love for a lot of these characters and stuff, right? And then they're able to learn about a lot of characters that maybe they weren't so familiar with and stuff. So there's numerous aspects that go into it, but ultimately for me personally, it's just the gameplay. The gameplay is extremely addictive. You know, it can be as slow as medium sped or sped up, you know, or fast as you want it to be, and you can kind of dictate that. But you know, like I said, the things that in Overwatch that weren't desirable, like being a healer character, in this game, I've been having a lot of fun playing as Mantis, and I'm getting more comfortable with Cloak and Dagger. But you know, I'm sure as time goes on, there's gonna be a lot of characters that I initially, because I mean, like I said, it's been less than a week that the game's been out, but over time there'll be a lot of characters that I start to give a chance and play with that I will really enjoy. But you know, for me to be having that much fun playing as a healer is just it's insane. And even characters that are just straight up, you know, their play styles are just straight up imitations of Overwatch characters. Like you take Hawkeye, which in my opinion, honestly, it's kind of hard to make Hawkeye any different. But like, you know, you have like your, what is it, Hanzo from Overwatch and stuff, the archery and stuff, and his abilities. But I think that's also a good thing, because people that were Overwatch fans, there wasn't like this massive learning curve. They could easily find a hero that they like, you know, related to and understood from that game to come over and play as well. And then just the aesthetic of the fact that, you know, it's a character that you also watch in movies or reading comic books and stuff that you already kind of understand. Even though Overwatch does have a very rich like world building and all that kind of stuff, very lovable, enjoyable characters, you know, but still, nonetheless, though, it's really hard to compete with something that's been around for twice as long as the majority of us have even existed, you know. Nonetheless, though, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up because we're coming up on the 17-minute mark. But that was just kind of like my little rant on what I've been thinking about. And, you know, like I said, yeah, you know, it's nice that most of the characters in the game are visually, you know, appealing. But I mean, that's just kind of like comics to begin with. I mean, you're going to be really hard pressed to find extremely mainstream characters, whether it be Marvel or DC, that aren't considered extremely appealing, because that's just, at the end of the day, it's what sells, right? Like, you know, of course, it's nice to look at Squirrel Girl. You know, I mean, she's thicker than a pot of cold grits. You know what I mean? Then you got Psylocke. I mean, Mantis. I mean, we could just go on, and they're only going to introduce more and more characters. You know, think about like Rogue coming in, all types of stuff. But that's not ultimately, if they had that, but the game was trash, we wouldn't be talking about it or playing it. You know what I mean? Like I said, this is a Warzone channel, right? Like, that's my main thing. That's what any of the followers that I have, any of the views that I've gotten, that's primarily where it's came from, 99.9% of it, right? And knowing that, I'm still slowly transitioning into, you know, I won't say that Rivals will be the only content, but you know, it's taken a big chunk of my time. Like, every day I get up, I say, oh, you know what, I'm going to play Delta Force. I'm going to play Warzone Ranked. And you know what I've ended up playing, because I just cannot stop? Rivals. You know, I just got into Ranked the other day. I think I won 2 out of 3. So, you know, because, you know, I play with most of my friends, and they're not really trying to play Ranked. But nonetheless, though, when they got off, you know, I played a little bit of Ranked. Extremely intense, extremely fun games, right? So, you know, like I said, let me know in the comments what you guys think about Rivals. Like, if you've been having fun, do you think it's just an Overwatch clone? Do you think that it's not going to survive? Like, the popularity isn't going to really survive much longer? Are you loving it? You know, hate it? What is it? Let me know in the comments. But I appreciate you guys listening, and